Hello and welcome back to Buffalo Sports Insider, the best sports show in the 716. I'm your host, Richard Miller, joined here by my co-hosts Thomas Bailey, Sebastian Sierra, and Alex Miley. And some exciting news this spring, Buffalo Sports Insider will also be available on Finger Lake Television. We will be announcing more as we get closer. So I would like to start off today's show with some very exciting news as well. As you may have seen, EA Sports is launching a new college football video game that will be releasing this summer. Just recently, they announced that all 134 FBS teams will appear in the game, including your very own UB Bulls. So I would just like to open up a question for my co-hosts. How excited are you for this game, and will you be starting a dynasty with the Bulls by chance?
Well, I would say that the UB Bulls have been
Have been one of my top teams. I mean, I was gonna potentially go to University of Buffalo. That was my first main place that I was gonna end up going, but they did not have the journalism program, they're just communication. So I wanted to be a little bit more specific and go with journalism. So I decided to come here to Buffalo State. So the big thing is yeah, that would be really fun to do and stuff like that. I've been excited for this game for a couple of years, ever since we found out that this was going to be a potential game that could happen. And now that it's really in the works, I'm really excited for this game.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for this game also.
I've been excited for it for a while. I don't know if I'll particularly use UB as a dynasty, but I definitely will be doing a lot of dynasty. Hopefully they have online so I can play with my friends on the dynasty. And I'll be playing all the game modes. I'm going to try them all out. It's just we haven't had a game in so long that the hype for this game is for real, and I'm extremely excited for it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Alex, but I definitely think I'll be starting a dynasty team with you being
pretty much making them a dominant team, especially from going to school in the Buffalo area. So that's definitely one big thing I'm excited for.
So while we're on the topic of UB in the game, who do you think will be the highest rated Bulls player?
I got to give it to linebacker Joe Andressen. After the season he just had, averaging 90
tackles, 12 tackles for a loss, 2 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. So easily, hands down, I'm going to give it to him.
I'll second that opinion. I think Andreessen's going to be one of
The better players on this UB team. I think that Ron Cook is another player that you could also see being one of the highest rated players or running back there. I feel like just the overall production for the linebacker position from last year for Andreessen, I feel like it's a no-brainer for him to be a higher overall in the game, and I feel like highest rated Bull nonetheless.
Yeah, and I'm gonna
opinion also. I think Andreessen's a beast. I think he's gonna definitely be a highest rated Bulls player. And yeah, I mean, I could see Ron Cook also getting it as a running back. Skill positions tend to get a boost in ratings, but I think it'll be Andreessen that ends up getting it.
So, as we already revealed, players will be given the opportunity to opt in or opt out of the game. Players that will opt in the game were only rewarded $600 and a free copy of the game, which could be a lot for players at UB, but for some of the bigger names in college football, it might not be as crazy an incentive. Do you think this is enough incentive to get some of the big name players to participate in the game, as we have seen Quinn Ewers, Travis Hunter, some of the players that have already announced that they will be in the game, but we also have a couple big names who have yet to announce whether or not they're opting in. So what is your opinion on that?
I feel like my main opinion with it is not necessarily that
$600 in the copy of the game is going to be what makes it worth it to them, but it's more or less just being in the first game in an entire decade. To be in the first college football game in a decade is not only an honor to me, but I feel like it's going to be exciting and fun to see them in a game like that. And on top of that, to get $600 and a free copy of the game, well, it doesn't sound too great on the surface for these guys who have $1 million NIL deals. I feel like at the same time, just being in the game, having your name in the game, just that staple is just enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. Just the opportunity to be in the game, period. It's just
a blessing, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree too. And if people are complaining about the $600,
you have to realize that out of the 134 teams with all the players, $600 adds up. It's over like $7 million and free copies of the game they're handing out to everyone. So $600 seems more than fair. And then the fact that they get to be in the first game, not only will it just the feel of being in the game is it'll help get their name out there. There'll be people that, I didn't know of this person, but they now know of him because they played with him in the game. And that could help them down the line with other sponsorships.
So while we're on the topic of NIL deals, we have yet to see a cover athlete for the new NCAA Football 25 video game. Some names I would like to throw out. So the last game was NCAA Football 14. Since then, we've had a boatload of impressive Heisman winners, including Derrick Henry, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Devontae Smith, Caleb Williams, and just recently Jaden Daniels. And then some current players that are of note: Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter at Colorado, Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, who is going to be fighting for that QB spot, Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Caleb Downs. So my question basically is, who do you think should be the cover athlete of this video game study?
I think it'd be really cool if they went in the direction of a quarterback.
Gonna single them out. It's Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter. I think they're two of the best prospects for this upcoming draft. Of course, the Colorado Buffaloes have gotten a ton of respect after Deion Sanders was hired like a year ago. I feel like this team would be impressive to see in the game. I feel like these are going to be two of the highest rated players, and I feel like who else to put on the cover than two of the guys who make the game so fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Shador
Hunter
Travis
one
Hunter
would be the best, but if they don't want to do that, maybe a
maybe a
Shador and Dion would also be pretty cool. Father-son duo on the game. I think that would be pretty fire, especially since it's a head coach quarterback. Dion's one of the top head coaches out there. Shador's one of the top quarterbacks out there. I think either combination of the two, I think, would be the right choice for them to make.
Yeah, I got to give it to the dual threat DB wide receiver Travis Hunter. After the season he just had, and I could also see him even being on there with Shador Sanders and possibly Dion as well too. So
I could see like a cover where they just make like a wide receiver and DB version of Travis Hunter. So like one that shows him
College football video game. So the game will be released in summer of 2024. It'll be available on the PS5 and Xbox Series X. We will have a Dynasty mode, a Road to Glory mode, and a new Ultimate Team mode. The college football playoff will be in the game, and multiple announcers have announced that they will be in the game, including Reese Davis, Kirk Herbstreit, Desmond Howard, Chris Fowler, among others. Creative player and conference alignment will be in the game, and coaches will not be represented in the game. So we will unfortunately not see Deion Sanders in the game. I'm sure you could create him, as well as Saban or Kirby Smart or whoever you'd want to create as a coach, but coaches will not be represented in the game. But now I would like to move on to professional football. Bills have a pretty big free agent this offseason that seems to not be coming back. It appears that Gabe Davis's time in Buffalo might be over. The free agent receiver recently posted a video on Instagram thanking the entire Buffalo Bills organization, Bills Mafia, the city of Buffalo, his coaches, his teammates. Do you think there's any chance he returns to Buffalo next year?
No, I can't see it happening. I would have to take an astronomical pay cut, and for a player this is going to be his first big contract in the NFL. He's been working on basically under $1 million for his entire career to this point. This is his first chance to go and get a good bag from a team that's willing to pay him the money, and that's just not going to be Buffalo. We are already $36.7 million over the cap, so we're not going to be able to do much of anything to begin with. And for a receiver with the production level of Gabe Davis, in my opinion, is not worth it either.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's no chance he returns. I think the Bills need to go and get a receiver in the draft and then get a free agent receiver that's pretty cheap. One guy that comes to mind for me would be Curtis Samuel. He can fill the Isaiah McKenzie role of the do-it-all receiver. He can catch the screens. He can catch the jet passes. He can attack the middle of the field, good run after catch player. And I think we'd be able to get him for like 6-7 mil, 1 year deal, see how that works out. But we definitely can't afford Gabe Davis, who's projected to get over 10 mil a year for a multi-year contract.
Sebastian?
yeah, I'd say it's time for Gabe Davis to pretty much just go and get a new replacement. A good replacement for me to be for Gabe Davis would be KJ Osborne after having a good season the past couple of seasons after being drafted in 2020 and averaging 650 yards per season with 5 touchdowns. So I think with them bringing KJ Osborne in would be a good replacement for Gabe Davis.
So while we're on the topic of replacements, some other free agent receivers of note, obviously Mike Evans, who is a little bit out of our range. T. Higgins recently got franchise tagged. Even if he didn't, he's still out of our range. But you do have Darnell Mooney, Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown, Tyler Boyd, Odell Beckham, DJ Shark, Curtis Samuel, KJ Osborne, and Isaiah McKenzie, who could end up
I
returning.
think Mooney would be a perfect fit for us, man. I feel like he realistically wants under 8 million. Around 8 million would be the cap ceiling for a player like Darnell Mooney. He had 1,055 yards and 4 touchdowns on 81 receptions in 2021. And that's insane for a team like the Chicago Bears that was really, really run heavy. On top of that, a rookie quarterback in Justin Fields that season. I feel like he'd do wondrous things in our offense. I feel like he could be a great number 2. He has that jet sweep ability, the receiver screens that we like to run. I think he offers value when it comes to blocking as well, being in that run-heavy offense for so long. I think it's just so much value for $8 million, but I prefer that we draft somebody. But if we do go with the free agent route, I think Mooney is a very intriguing option for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think we should bring in Curtis Samuel, but that's just more of like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. I think we need to draft a receiver in the top 3 round, preferably first or second round for me, because of how much wide receiver talent there is in this draft. We just can't miss out. There's guys like Troy Franklin and Brian Thomas Jr. and in the first round, but if we want to wait to the second round, maybe Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, the guy we got from South Carolina. All of them are great names. I mean, just pick who you want. Trust Bean that he'll make the right decision, but one of those guys I think has to become a Buffalo Bill.
See, I'd say keep it as bring another vet in and have KJ Osborne come in. I think after this past couple of seasons he's been having and averaging the 5 touchdowns with the 615 yards per season, I think you'd honestly bring a lot into the Bills organization.
So as you mentioned, some of the receivers in the upcoming draft, the Bills picked 28th in the 2024 NFL draft. Where do you think the Bills should go with this pick?
I feel like it's going to be best player available at this point. I feel like we have a couple different needs. We need a defensive lineman, particularly edge or D tackle. Doesn't really matter, I guess. But on top of that, you need a receiver, obviously, as we just talked about. And I think we also need a safety to replace the most likely retired Micah Hyde. As sad as that is to say, his time in Buffalo is probably up. I feel like it's going to come down to what kind of player you can get there. I feel like if we can, we should take a safety or a D lineman first. I feel like this receiver class is so deep. You can find someone in the 2nd or 3rd round. I feel like it's just better positional value if you get someone earlier in the draft at the other positions. But in the end, I feel like we have to take at least one of these guys.
You know, I totally agree. I think it should be best player available out of wide receiver, D line, and safety, preferably in the 1st round, wide receiver, D line, because I think we can get a good safety in the 2nd round. I think we could also probably get a wide receiver in the 2nd round. So unless Brian Thomas or Troy Franklin's there, I think you seriously have to look at D-line, guys like Chop Robinson or the D tackle from Texas. I think either of those guys would fit in perfect on our team. But really, whoever they think the best player available out of those positions, I think is the right choice.
Yeah, I got to go best player available, but when it comes to first, got to go for a wide receiver first. If not wide receiver, go for a defensive end D tackle. If either of those get taken, I definitely say go and get a safety who's going to show out on the defense and kind of much just lead and help make the organization better and just give them that nonstop.
So another thing I would like to mention about the Gabriel Davis video is that towards the end of this video, he posted some stats and accolades from his career so far. Do you think this is a good recruiting tactic, or do you think teams will view it as he's cocky, or what is your overall opinion on it?
I feel like it's going to put it out there, of course. I mean, you got a team like Buffalo, though, and I feel like, in my opinion, it's more bad than it does good because you got a receiver. He was our number 2 receiver in Buffalo, and realistically, right behind Diggs. When Diggs is getting double teamed so often, the next best receiver is normally the one that gets the targets. And when he didn't have the production that realistically you should have had, I feel like his stat line isn't really screaming to me wide receiver 1 money. And I feel like posting something like that on a video like that kind of shows cockiness. I feel like it can show arrogance in a way and just kind of overall ignorance, not thanking the fans as much, just kind of throwing his stats out there like, hey, come get me.
You know, I agree. And those are just the good stats. There's also bad stats that obviously he didn't post, like how 40% of Josh Allen's interceptions were targeting Gabe Davis because of the constant miscommunication between the two, or Gabe Davis dropping it like in the Denver game and going right into the safety's hands. I think he just had problems being consistent enough to value getting wide receiver 1 or 2 money, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I agree with you on that because he didn't show none of the bad. He only showed the good, and with all the bad that's coming from his stats, it's like, what can you really do? What are you going to provide to the next team that you're going to go for? Is the real question. Are you going to keep showing off? Or are you going to go downhill? Are you going to make your money worth it? Or are you going to make it just sort of like it's not worth it, pretty much?
Well, on the topic of next team you're going for, where do you think Gabe Davis will land? Who do you think is the best fit for him?
I gotta say
go for
Dallas. I say he can be
Dallas.
really good
I like that.
use for Dallas, especially as a deep threat with him, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott. I think he would be in as a good number 2 right there.
I'd have to say, as much as I would hate this, I feel like it'd be the Chiefs or the Jets as the two most likely spots for me. I feel like the Jets really need that WR2. And I mean, yeah, there's been some speculation about maybe a Devontae Adams trade this offseason. That could be insane. But if that doesn't happen, I feel like a good backup option would be Gabriel Davis. He, of course, knows the Buffalo Bills very well. It's going to help you in your 2 matchups against your divisional opponent. And that's just something that you don't really think about that's underlining as well. He comes from a really good system, and in a team like that really needs blocking badly, whether that be O-line or receiving in general, he offers that really, really well, and I can't overstate that enough, that his blocking ability is one of the best in the league for any receiver, and I feel like that'd be a good fit. As for Kansas City, I feel like he just offers anything better than Rashee Rice. I feel like there's not really anything there in Kansas City. While I do think they probably end up going for a bigger name like Evans per se, I feel like Gabe Davis could also be that backup option for them as well. Bless you.
Yeah, no, I would have to say Kansas City. As much as I would hate to see it, I don't want to go to one of our rivals like that. But I think he'd be a great replacement over MVS or Mecole Hardman because he's a deep threat. And I think you give him a quarterback like Mahomes, just like how he had with Josh Allen. He could have a lot of big games, have a lot of big plays. And I think he's a notch above like an MVS or Mecole Hardman. So I think it would make sense if they swing and miss on a Mike Evans or Michael Pittman. I think they could pivot and take Gabe Davis.
So Gabe Davis made under $1 million last year. He should be looking for deals upwards of $10 million this year. And with the Bills cap situation, it's just looking not likely. But I would like to shift to some Sabres news. The Sabres played a really exciting shootout game against the Carolina Hurricanes last night, in which they won 3-2. But before we get into that, I would just like to mention some Sabres news that was announced earlier today, and I would like to defer that to Alex.
Yeah, the Sabres just announced they're making some renovations to the arena in this offseason for the upcoming season. They're going to be replacing the roof, and they're going to also, what was been long hoped for, they're getting a new Jumbotron, which is going to be a 27 by 43, which is almost double what they've had this year, or what they've had currently, with 4 corner panels and 2 underbelly panels for like the lower view seats. So they don't have to look up in the air and kill their neck for the entire game if they want to see something on the Jumbotron. I'm extremely excited for this. I think it was much needed to do these improvements. Now, hopefully, they can improve on the ice instead of just off the ice.
So now back to the game. The Sabres won 3-2 against a very good Hurricanes team. The game went into a shootout in which Casey Middlestat scored the only goal of the entire shootout, winning 1-0 and winning the game 3-2 for the Sabres. The other 2 goals in regulation were scored by Jeff Skinner and Owen Power off assists by Cousins and Okposo for Skinner's goal, and Krebs and Benson for Power's goal. So I would just like to ask Thomas, what are your overall opinions on this game?
This game was electric, man. I feel like this game is one of our best all the way around games. We were forechecking really well. We had that physicality. We were bringing everything you want in a good hockey team. We were playing a complete game on offense, defense, even in goaltending. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen stepped up, had an amazing game. I feel like the third period is really where it broke out for us when we ended up giving up that goal to Marty Necas right there on the power play for the Hurricanes. I feel like that's when we finally started to get it together. Owen Power, of course, ties it with like 4 minutes and 5 seconds remaining. He adds that extra value for us on the defensive side and offensive side, and he ends up getting that tying goal, forces the overtime. Overtime was electric, back and forth for the majority of it. Neither team could really pull away. It ended up becoming a game of just which goaltender could make the more stops in the shootout, and we win our first game in the shootout all season, just our second shootout of the year, and we get the job done.
Yeah, the thing I liked most about the game was the fact that in the third period when we were losing, we were able to send the game to overtime, which has been a huge problem for us this year. We've lost countless games by one goal because we couldn't send it to overtime. So even if we lost, we were able to secure a point, which has been a problem all year as we only have, 4 overtime losses this year compared to most teams who have 6 to 10. And those loser points are huge in a super tight wild card race if we want to make a race for the playoffs. But again, UPL is just insane, man. Since the turn of the new year, he's been the best goalie in hockey, and it's just been awesome to watch his development. And then we have Devin Levi in Rochester, who's going to be a beast when he comes up. That 1-2 punch should be great for the next 5 to 10 years. And then our offense, again, Carolina has one of the best goalies in the league lately, and they also have one of the best defenses in the league. So the fact that we were able to get these goals on them, we were able to get a power play goal on a team that has an insanely good penalty kill was huge to see.
So I would just like to go even more on the UPL bandwagon by announcing some of his stats from last night's game. So he saved 30 out of 32 shots on goal, which is a 93.8 save percentage, along with saving all 4 goal attempts against them in the shootout. So just overall phenomenal game for a phenomenal goalie. And I don't know if I was even expecting UPL to be this good. But that game moves the Sabres to a now 27-27-4 record. They're currently 6th in the Atlantic Division, but they're still 12 points behind the 4th place Red Wings. Do you think there is any chance that the Sabres could make the playoffs this year?
There is definitely a chance, but I feel like the odds are extremely low at this point. I feel like Buffalo needs a couple more just kind of players. I feel like we're a player or two away. I feel like that's an off-season thing, though. I feel like a trade deadline, like a rental, being a player that you trade for that's on an expiring deal that you don't re-sign in the off-season. That would be a rental. I feel like that would be really bad for us right now. I feel like that's not the way we should be going. I feel like this is the kind of year that we just kind of take that one last transition step and maybe use our pick to trade it and get someone good. We could draft someone who could be an impact player like Zach Benson has been for the team this year. And I feel like that Sabres team is going to finally take the next step next year. So I feel like, as sad as it is to say, I feel like this is just another year of missing the playoffs for the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, I agree. I think the odds are pretty low. But I think if we do want to go on the run, at least the good news is a lot of the teams we play coming up are teams that we have to jump, like the Devils, the Capitals, Tampa, Detroit, all these teams that we're battling for wild card. We all have games against them this year. So if we do go on a run, we can beat these teams, which will help us jump in the standings. But again, I don't think we really have much of a shot because our schedule is super tough the rest of the year. I think we should just start looking forward to next year, get the young guys minutes, keep letting UPL play and dominate, and just get ready for next season.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Just getting ready for next season would be the best thing. Having everybody ready would give everybody an advantage on that team to let them just keep doing better.
Build that chemistry as well, and it's something that really needs to happen. The real interesting part is going to be Middlestat and Lucan into this deadline here coming up in about a week and a half. So we'll see how that goes.
So that will conclude today's episode of Buffalo Sports Insider. I would just like to restate that this spring, BSI will be available on Finger Lake Television. Again, we will be announcing it more as more develops as we get closer to the date, but very big for this organization. And that has been it for today's episode. I'm your host, Richard Miller, here with Thomas Bailey, Sebastian Sierra, and Alex Miley. And that will conclude today's episode.